Hello everyone and welcome back to the Final Chicane with me, Kristen Boylan. Welcome back everyone, welcome back to the first race after the summer break. Did feel like the summer break felt a lot shorter than usual. I don't know if it actually was, but didn't really feel like a break at all. So yeah, we have a lot to discuss. Also an F1 Academy race week this week, so hopefully you've kept an eye out on that and gave it a chance if you haven't before, because I will be talking about that also today. Guys, I've had a week from hell, to be honest, this week. Let me tell you a brief synopsis of my life since the last time I did an episode in the last week. Tuesday, I just had a little faint for the first time ever, like just as soon as I got out of bed too quickly is all it was, but I fainted and I fell on my head, and then I was really nauseous and throwing up afterwards, like after I hit my head. So then I had to go to A&E because in case I got like a head injury, didn't want to get that. I was in A&E for like 8 hours. Honestly, if something happened to my head, probably would have been too late, but I did feel fine for that time. I just wanted to get a double check, but in the end they didn't even tell me if I had a concussion. They didn't do a CT scan. They did nothing. They just accused me of other stuff, and I was like, girl, not gonna get into that though. So that was already a mess of a Tuesday. Missed work to be in A&E, and so did my sister and my brother who spent it with me. And then on Friday, guess what happened? I failed my driving test. My first driving test. I've never done one before, and I failed. I failed miserably as well. To be fair, considering like I had to take it easy driving, because even though they didn't tell me if I had a concussion or not, you're not supposed to drive if you have a concussion, so I couldn't really practice a lot beforehand. When I was doing the test, I thought it all really went well. I was like, no, I'm nailing this. I'm actually nailing this test. I mean, I knew I made a few mistakes, but I was like, they won't add up. That won't. Like, one time I forgot to put it in first gear when I was starting, and I was just like, it sort of leaves your head when you make mistakes. And then I was parking, and there was just no, like, I can't really park yet, and there was cars either side and the entire row behind the parking space that I wanted, so I just didn't have a lot of room. Like, I couldn't even swing out to go into the parking space. I don't know how anyone would. Probably easy enough, but I couldn't. And the instructor she grabbed my wheel and stopped me, but she said that was a difficult, like, because usually the test centre isn't that busy, so she was like, she'd only give me grade 2 for that, since, you know, parking isn't really a big thing on the test. It's more just like you have to park to end your test. But I got a grade 3, which I didn't realise during the test, and if you don't do it in that format, one grade 3 is an instant fail. And I got a grade 3 for not giving enough space to like a stopped lorry when I was passing it. Like, I don't know, it might have been a bin lorry or something. And I think it was that got me the grade, because I got like a grade 2 and a grade 3 for not leaving enough space between stopped vehicles. So I thought that was a little harsh, because did I hit a car? No. And I didn't even notice at the time that could have possibly been a fault, because I indicated out, did my observations, indicated back in, and still automatically failed. I got no marks for observation though, so my observations were perfect, which that's something. But yeah, I was sort of really upset that I failed on Friday, and I woke up Saturday morning and I literally couldn't care less anymore. That's just how it works when you fail. But I do have to wait like 10 weeks to sit again, which is the most frustrating thing, because I just want to be able to drive to college and leave when I want to and not have to wait for the one bus an hour, if there's even a seat left for me on it. It was also the week anniversary of when my dog got murdered, which I'm not allowed to talk about, but he got murdered, and he was my soul dog. His name was Bailey. So it was already a tough week as it was. I actually got the concussion, or had that fault, on my dog's death anniversary. So maybe I just wanted to be a little closer to Bailey that day. That's so bad to say, but I felt bad because I couldn't even go out to his grave afterwards because I was just like ill. Anyway, sorry, we should probably talk about Formula 1 because I'm just talking about my life and no one cares. Let's do Riddle of the Week. The riddle of the week this week is actually a driver that I hear people mentioning quite a bit, but I've never known anything about this person. So I'm excited to tell you the story of him afterwards. A Roman-born racer with elegance and skill, at Lotus I won, showing flair and will. I played the piano with a gentle hand, but at the Paul Ricard, fate had other plans. A tragic test day ended my run, whom I remembered for what I'd begun. So, short riddle, but yeah, I feel like the clues are easy enough if you know the person. But if you don't, then you should wait till the end and learn a bit about this person because he was very well loved, from what I can tell. Okay, let's talk about the Zandvoort Grand Prix. First of all, if anyone wants a recap of the season so far or the F1 Academy season so far, they are my last two episodes. My last one is the Formula 1 recap, and the one before that is the F1 Academy recap. And now we're on to the Dutch Grand Prix. We'll start with the media moments. Not too much media moments because all of the media sort of came out from the week before, but one big media moment point is Jack Doohan being announced to be in Alpine next year. Honestly, I could not be happier for Jack Doohan. If you know Jack, which I don't, but if you know of Jack, like me, you know that he's the one reserve driver who is always in the Alpine garage doing whatever, just even if he's just standing there and watching and just supporting any way he can. He does the simulator work, he does the media work, he's always doing little interviews after the race and interviewing other drivers as well. His dad is Mick Doohan, and he is he's just like a permanent fixture in the paddock, even without his seat. He's been out of racing for a bit to focus on trying to get into Formula 1 and doing what he can for Alpine. So I'm just so glad that he's finally gotten that chance. Because we don't see it too often. We don't see reserve drivers actually get up to being a Formula 1 driver of the team that they're reserve driver to too often. Sometimes teams just go completely different direction when they're changing drivers. So this is nice to see. You can see with Visa Cash App or being Alpine, they're definitely putting a lot of their attention into their reserve drivers and getting them ready in case the seat does become free at that team. So yeah, I really hope Jack Doohan does well. And is he Australian? We might have one less Australian on the grid next year, but there's a lot of Australianness around. We'll have in New Zealand though, I think, if we don't have the Australians. So a lot from that side of the world. But I love it. Daniel is quite good friends with Jack Doohan as well, so I like the Australians getting their chance now. So that is something exciting for next year. Obviously, Jack is replacing Esteban Ocon, who signed with Haas after he left Alpine. So Jack is going to be teammates with Pierre, and the Alpine is looking a lot better. So hopefully, if they can take another step forward next year, they could have a competitive enough car on their hands. Also, sticking with the lines of Alpine, Oliver Oakes joined Alpine as their new team principal. Obviously, it was announced a little bit ago that after the summer break, Oliver Oakes would be stepping in. He knows Esteban and Pierre, and he does have a lot of work cut out for him. But this week, with how Alpine did, I think he's definitely on the right track, and he should be proud of this weekend. He's a very young team principal, and he's a driver himself with that experience. So, yeah. I think it's an exciting addition to the paddock. What else media moments do we have? It was Max's 200th Grand Prix, which actually, I feel like because Max is so young, you sometimes forget how long he's actually been in Formula 1. He's been here since he was 17. He's probably 26, 25, 26 now. I have no idea what age he is actually. But yeah, he's been here a lot, and he confirmed again he's absolutely not going to be doing another 200. I'd say he's 5 years max left in him before he's just done. I feel like that always happens though, the best ones just never stay for as long as you'd want them to. Who knows though, maybe Max will just find a new love for it and the media duties and the 24 races a year, and he might stay longer. Also, there's this cute clip of, for some reason, Daniel was asked to do a little tribute to Max for his 200th race. So Daniel wrote, or spoke to someone who wrote this whole article on Max, just Daniel's opinion on Max and when they were teammates and Max now and all that sort of stuff. And it's so cute because Max was doing a live stream, one of on a, you know how he games, he was doing one of a stream, I think that's what it's called, just a stream, and one of his friends, Crane, read out a comment that was asking Max if he saw Daniel's tribute to him, and Max didn't realise Daniel had done one or whatever, and then he proceeded to read it on screen, just to himself, like just quietly, because he got excited when he found out Daniel had did a little tribute to him. And yeah, he went in silence for like 5 minutes and just read the Daniel tribute article, and then he said it was really nice after. Very cute from Daniel and Max. Haas drama. There was Haas drama. I don't know too much about this because I missed free practices because of my driving test, and I feel like they must have talked about this on the Friday because they were just talking about it like normal on Saturday, and I was like, what do you mean Haas aren't allowed to leave Zandvoort? I don't know the ins and outs of it all, but apparently like something to do with Haas not paying a sponsor or something like that, and then it was like the team would be like seized as an asset until they paid, so they couldn't leave Zandvoort. But I think it's all fine. They will be at Monza, and I'm sure it was just a little misunderstanding, hopefully, and I'm sure it's all sorted now. There's definitely a lot more to that, but I haven't had time. Listen, you've heard my week, okay? I haven't had time to process much, okay? FP1, I don't know, because I didn't watch it. I didn't watch FP2 either, and I didn't watch any of the F1 Academy practices, because, yeah, like I said, my driving test, I had a pre-test before, which I passed. I passed my pre-test, and then, yeah, so I was just away all day, and then when I came home, I was too upset to even think about Formula 1. I just heard the sound of a car, and I was like, no, I hate people who can drive. Anyway, we're done talking about the driving test. Quali for F1 Academy, we'll do it in the order of the weekend. So F1 Academy, I do my own separate F1 Academy things, so I just include them a little in these episodes. But if you missed F1 Academy, I guess the main thing that happened was Bianca Bustamante crashed. She had a very bad start to the weekend. She was looking a bit unsteady. She couldn't compete in race 1 because of that. Abby Pulling then got P1. She continued her streak of just being insane. She got P1 for race 1, and then Dorian Pan got the second fastest time, or her second time was the fastest, because that's how it works. So then she got P1 for race 2, and it was just a good qualifying session. Also the wild card, Nina Gaidman, got P6. So the wild card is just someone who comes in for one race from that country, so she's Dutch, and she got P6 straight away, which was pretty iconic, I think. Well done, Nina. FP3 then happened. It was a wet session. Logan had that big crash, quite a scary crash as well. We've obviously seen quite a few Williams incidents this year and Williams crashes. I think Logan crashing was blown a bit out of proportion because we saw a lot of drivers go off a bit and hit the curbs, and that was just a Logan thing, obviously his fault. But in a wet FP practice, it wasn't like an insane mistake for him to make. And then all the talk about, actually he's just going to get fired straight away, was just so dramatic. The only other thing that we really saw from FP3 was that Haas were having a bit of problems with their brakes. They weren't completely on top of the game all weekend, but I mean, me saying they're not on top of the game was still Hulk getting points. So that shows how far they've come this year and how insane Hulk has been. Quali, an exciting qualifying session. It always is. The qualifying sessions have been really good this season so far, I think. Perez and Hamilton impeded, which resulted in Hamilton getting a 3-place grid penalty. It did only affect Perez's first run. He could have been out in Q1 though, so you would understand, but he wasn't. It was just that he didn't have that extra set of softs to go to the end, so affected him a little, but still a good qualifying from Perez. Sargent didn't get out to do a qualifying lap. Luckily he was allowed to compete in the race because he had done enough time in the free practices, but yeah, a bit frustrating for him and for Williams. Joe, Bottas, Ocon and Ricciardo out. Probably disappointing for Ocon and Ricciardo considering how Pierre did, and then obviously Daniel just wants to be doing a bit better than he is right now. P15 Magnussen, P14 Hulk, P13 Tsunoda, and P12 Hamilton, P11 Sainz. Again, a surprise from Sainz and Hamilton again because their teammates were that step ahead of him. It wasn't a surprise when you looked at the qualifying session because Sainz was just a bit off of it that day, and then Hamilton just didn't really get the lap together and obviously had the impeding going on, so he fell back a few places as well even after that. Then Q3, Lando pole. Insane. Yeah, Lando pole, insane. Not only pole, but 3/10 on Max Verstappen. Max was having some car issues, and we know that Red Bull hasn't been as strong as it can be this weekend so far. But Lando did nothing wrong that entire session. He pulled it together, and he got absolutely everything out of that car. So that was a very incredibly impressive lap from Lando. Max P2, Oscar P3, Russell P4, and then Checo P5, which is definitely a good step. He has been doing well in the last qualifying session, so hopefully that will continue for him. Again, the car isn't at what it was earlier this season, so P5 is a good result for that. And yeah, the Aston Martins didn't get out to do that final lap. Alex did get disqualified from qualifying. He had a very, very good qualifying, and he probably would have stayed in the points and scored some good points. But yeah, he got disqualified because of his car setup didn't meet the regulations, so that was disappointing and a fault on the Williams side, not Alex's fault anyway. So yeah, there was then that bit of drama because like where everyone started just didn't really end up where they finished. Didn't make sense. Where everyone finished in qualifying didn't actually end up where they started because of the grid penalties, and then Alex falling back from, well, to be disqualified from qualifying also boosted a few people up. And then the race. It was a good race. It was, I wouldn't say Zandvoort was my favourite race of the season, but it was a good race. You could see the raw pace in more cars than usual, I think. Like, I really enjoyed watching Gasly in that race, and Hamilton as well. Like, you could see the talent when people were pushed back to further than they could, and they had to have the raw speed and that overtaken power and the defence as well to stay where they are. So in that aspect, it was definitely a good race. Unfortunately, Lando didn't have the best start. He has now even longer running record of not leading the first lap once he gets pole. But we saw this time that that was definitely more of a problem on the car side than Lando. I know in the past it has been maybe more of a Lando problem. But Oscar, for one, has very great starts this year. It's one of his strengths, and he had a bad start as well. So the car just I think there was a bit of wheel spin from what I could see. I might be wrong there, but it just didn't look like got the traction, and the revs might have not been high enough is what they're saying on TV. I don't really understand the revs, but yeah, that was a bit of a disappointing start from Lando. But did he make it up? Absolutely, he made that up. A few strategy also changes at the start. I think Tsunoda was on softs, Bottas was on softs. Was anyone else on softs at the start? Hamilton potentially was on softs as well. I would say I wouldn't have said that would have been the best move or the move that I would have picked for that race, because starting on softs is a clear 2-stop strategy, and you can do the 1-stop strategy at Zandvoort, but also there's a 50% chance of a safety car, 50% chance of virtual safety car as well. So to get those positions at the start, you'd be hoping for that safety car. And I guess those strategies just come into having luck, I guess, on your side, but I don't really think they worked out this time. Hamilton made it work by continuously making those tires last, but it ruined Tsunoda's race ultimately, and Bottas's too. Pierre got a very good start. Charles got a very good start. Charles really outdrove that Ferrari this week, and he was definitely one of the highlights, I think, to watch. Pierre as well, like, who would have thought at the start of the season that by the halfway break we would have been watching Pierre in the Alpine fight off the Ferrari of Carlos Sainz, because what's the Alpine doing there? He's qualified P19 and P20 at the start of the year. But yeah, Pierre has really started to shine recently, like even more than usual. He's always been a good driver, but he has really taken that step forward, and I hope that continues as well. Alpine definitely made the right decision snatching on to him and holding him on for next year. I mean, yeah, Hamilton screwed over a little by strategy, just the strategy not going their way, but he made it work because he was in the top 10 on the softs by like lap 13, 14. If he didn't impede Perez, he would have been higher, but he did, and he deserved to get that penalty anyway. So while Hamilton was making his way into the top 10 on softs, some of the people who started on mediums were already boxing for the first time. Alex boxed lap 14 the same time that Lewis. I noticed Lewis had made his way into the top 10. Obviously, Max took the lead at the start, and usually how we would see that go is that Max would just drive away into the sunset and leave everyone else behind him. But we did see Lando manage to stick on to him for a second for like 20 laps, which, once again, if you told yourself 10 races ago that this would be where we are now, you would have laughed. And yeah, Lando took the lead. I think it was lap 18. I have here that Lando took the lead in a very clean move. Overall pace was just there. And Max was already a second behind Lando by the next lap. So the McLaren really just did absolutely pull away. And from then on, you knew Max wasn't fighting back unless Lando made some sort of mistake. Lando was going to run away with it. Hamilton then kept on those soft tyres. The soft tyres. Keeping in mind that most of the people on mediums had pitted. I know that obviously the people in the backfield were more forced to pit earlier to fight against Alex because he obviously pitted quite early, and the undercut didn't seem to be a very strong way to go. Not that there was anything wrong with it, but just we've seen how powerful it can be in other places. So yeah, Hamilton then pit lap 24 for his first and only pit stop of that race. So yeah, I'm guessing Mercedes knew what they were doing. Like, worst comes to worst, there's no safety car. Hamilton can probably make those tyres last, and he did. A few silent but strong races, I think, in my opinion, and I think I would give that to Charles. He had a very, not too much on camera, staying in P3, neatly done, pace was there, seemed to outdrive the car. I mean, the Ferrari wasn't bad this week, obviously. Carlos had his issues in qualifying, so it was hard to see the full potential and pace of the Ferrari, but Charles did a really excellent job this weekend. And then I would say Daniel as well. He didn't qualify well, which was sort of just on him. I think he just didn't put the lap together. It was just a bit slower than his teammate Yuki, but he started P13 after the penalties, P13, P12 maybe. Yeah, after all the penalties, and he had fallen back quite a bit to everyone who started on the softs because he started on the mediums, and he made a significant amount of overtakes. He made the tyres last very, very long on his mediums. He only pitted once, and he finished just outside of the points. Unfortunately, he was stuck behind Stroll, and Stroll got a penalty anyway, so Stroll would have finished behind Daniel, but he didn't have a chance to attack the Haas of Nico Hülkenberg in front of them and try to get close to points. So that was a little frustrating, I'd say, from the Visa catch-up or B side, but it was a really strong race from Daniel, and there were points where he was lapping 2 seconds faster than Stroll in front of him, and quite a significant amount faster than his teammate as well. They actually had the biggest teammate speed gap. What is the word I'm looking for? Gap in time. I don't know. They had like just a bit under a second, maybe 8/10 of a gap between Daniel and Yuki. Obviously Yuki had the awful strategy. He had the Hungary strategy, the strategy that Daniel had in Hungary, where there was just an extra pit stop that ruined the race, and they were on, I mean, Daniel started on mediums and pitted the same time as the soft tyres. I think it was Hungary, I'm right in saying. So yeah, Visa Cash App or B need to work on the strategy working for both of their drivers and not sort of praying for a safety car. I feel like whatever driver is ahead somehow just gets the bad strategy accidentally, because obviously they think the strategy is going to work, but it doesn't always in the end. And it didn't for Yuki, but still quite an impressive gap considering, I mean, based on just pure lap times, because Daniel was in traffic as well. They had quite similar traffic in front of them, but obviously Yuki was behind slower cars, so there's a bit understandable for that as well. But yeah, I definitely think Daniel and Yuki are becoming quite matched. Obviously Yuki is ahead, as he should be, because I just think Yuki's sort of insane. Like, he's just so fast usually. His qualifying, he is definitely better one lap pace than Daniel for sure. I think I'd still give Daniel the upper hand on the race pace overall, or racecraft maybe, but Yuki has that one lap speed, and overall I would put Yuki ahead of Daniel, which is showing in the results anyway. Yeah, like I said, Sainz and Hamilton didn't have the best start to the weekend, but they absolutely made up for it in the race. Also, another, maybe a slight strategy fumble from Mercedes to George Russell, because I'm not sure if I felt the need of him boxing to softs. I don't think he would have really caught up. The hards, was he on hards at this point or mediums? I think he might have been on hards, but the hards were looking strong the entire race, so I didn't think there was much need for him to box, and brought him closer to Lewis in the end. And yeah, again, not a great strategy for Williams, because Alex pitted again around lap 50 to 60, and he didn't even start on the softs, so that just felt like a bit of a waste to me. Gasly was making the good moves all race. He had a really good move on Hulk actually, and Charles too. Charles was lapping faster than Verstappen at some point as well, and if the race was longer he probably would have caught him more, but it wasn't longer. And yeah, the cool down room interview was funny with the interview. The cool down room was funny with Charles's face when he found out that Lando had won by like 20 seconds. Like, great. We can't beat Red Bull as it is, and now we have to worry about McLaren. And there's two of them. There's two great drivers in McLaren. Oscar didn't have as good of a weekend as Lando, but he still had a strong weekend, and he's still right up there. So, all very impressive. I will say Alonso also has been improving recently. He had a good race. I know he didn't go out again in Q3, which he might have got a bit higher if he did, and if things would worked out more in his favour then. But he did finish ahead of Stroll at this race, and he qualified better. So I think that is a bright light in Alonso's rest of the season. Hopefully that things will change and he might do a little better, hopefully. But yeah, Norris was just untouchable in Zandvoort. He was untouchable that entire weekend. And I think in the end he won by like 22 seconds. With Verstappen in P2 and then Charles who gained from P6 to P3 as well. So yeah, I feel like Charles did go a bit more unnoticed, but he had a great race. Very impressive. I feel like Lando feels a little different recently. Like, I think it might just be his attitude towards things. I honestly think, from my unpsychological opinion, that he just seems a little sad or like withdrawn a bit. I don't know. I feel like maybe the pressure's getting to him a bit and it's not showing in his driving, but it's more just, he might just be a little anxious maybe about the fact that this championship is actually a possibility now. And if he keeps winning and if Max, falls further behind with Red Bull, then this is a real contender and maybe he's trying to just keep his head down. I'd say that's it, to be honest. He's probably just trying to keep his head down and yeah, hopefully he's all good at that. I say the more the drivers get more well known and the more social media interactions and everything, that has to play a role in everything. Because obviously, like, people always use the excuse, it's like, they're millionaires, they can't be upset about this, but like, even millionaires have feelings, guys. And yeah, I'd way rather be upset with $1 million than upset without $1 million. But it's not easy constantly being in the centre of criticism and everything you do and everything you say is being analysed and you can't hang out with anyone without it being made a big deal, and like every mistake you make is just blown so much out of proportion and you can't even joke around with your friends without like their fan base saying that, oh, this was a horrible thing to do and like he hates Max and Max hates him and everything. Not that has happened this weekend. I know that Lando probably faced a bit of criticism for his Simply Lovely remark after he won the race, but him and Max are friends. I think people forget, like, they're best friends and you joke around with your friends. They're not just like colleagues, they're genuinely friends and they have the same friend group as well. They are both friends with Martin Garrix, who we saw at the race, and I mean many other people as well. So I feel like that must be tough, just having to live like that, because people are so boring. Do you ever get that? Like, people are just so boring. Do you really not have anything better to talk about? Like, people get offended over everything. Like, there's things that you should absolutely be offended by, and then there's things that you shouldn't be offended by. And like, God forbid someone has an opposite opinion to you in this, and then all of a sudden you know nothing about anything. And yeah, I'd say it can be tough to be in the public eye, but that's not really a rant, that's just a discussion. But I don't mean that just in general of Lando, I just mean that in everyone, because you can see the change in the drivers' personalities and how they approach certain things at a certain rough time media wise. Like, you could see it in Bottas when there was rumours that he was going to be replaced by George. I mean, Daniel was probably one of the most noticeable changes in personality when, during that rough time at the end of McLaren, even after he was already fired and before he was fired. Lando now, like, the better he does, the more hate he's going to get from, as the fans of, I guess, the drivers he's against are more nervous that Lando could be a real challenge. But I guess you do just have to have thick skin. I feel like hating on drivers is just so odd though. Like, imagine logging in on Instagram and just commenting under like a driver's post hate. That's so embarrassing. That's genuinely so embarrassing. I cringe so hard. So sometimes I just can't look at the drivers' Instagram pages because, like, why are there 12-year-olds in the comment section? Anyway, I'll always be a promoter of positivity in the F1 fandom. That's what I'm here for. My opinion on that is never going to change. Just be like a little nicer to people, honestly. Yeah, Helmut Marko over the weekend over the last week said that Liam Lawson definitely has a seat in Formula 1 next year. and that sort of forced Christian Horner to say, actually, no, he doesn't, but he could. Like, it's not the case right now. That got me thinking about if there's certain clauses for Daniel and Perez to stay in Formula 1. I think, obviously, I'd say there's always going to be a clause in a Formula 1 contract, and I'd say there definitely is that for Perez. But I'm curious as if there is that with Daniel, which there is, what that would be. And my opinion on it, and when I say my opinion on it, my completely uneducated guess of an opinion that's just genuinely just came from my brain and not a rumour or anything, is that Daniel probably has been given the, what's the word I'm looking for, the rule, that's not the word I'm looking for, but like the clause maybe, that he's gone if maybe he doesn't beat Yuki, and maybe if he beats Yuki he might be considered for the Red Bull seat. Still think Yuki should be considered for the Red Bull seat if they part ways with Perez, but that's not my choice. Yeah, I feel like that might be a thing. Daniel has to beat Yuki. But Daniel, again, has also been talking about how this is all out of his hands now. The only thing he can do is drive. I feel like there's some sort of ultimatum there that Daniel has been given. And I don't know, I guess since Yuki is definitely confirmed to have a seat. But then again, like I'd say, yeah, I want Daniel to beat Yuki. But what happens if Yuki does really well? He might be considered for the Red Bull seat. Like, I'd also like to see that. But I just don't want to see Daniel leave Formula 1. But I do want to see Liam Lawson in Formula 1. So it's a bit conflicting. If we could just fit Liam Lawson in somewhere else that didn't involve anyone losing their seat, that would be really great. Because I just can't deal with that. Ugh, what are your opinions on it? I'm interested to know. Will we do Riddle of the Week? Let's do Riddle of the Week. So, the riddle answer was Elio De Angelis. Do you know him? Once again, I wasn't alive in this year, obviously. So, and I've watched a few videos on him to try to learn a bit about him, and I don't know how his name is pronounced because everyone pronounces it different, and I'm not Italian. Elio De Angelis is how I'm going to pronounce it. He was born into a wealthy family, Roman family, on March 26th in 1958. And he made quite the name for himself in Formula 1. He started his Formula 1 career with the Shadow team in 1979, and he had a very strong debut season, and I think his best result on his debut was 4th at the US Grand Prix. In 1980 then he joined Lotus team and he raced alongside Andretti, who we know, and he won his first Grand Prix in Austria in 1982, 2 years later. So yeah, he was driving the same era as Villeneuve and Pironi. I actually am watching a documentary on Villeneuve. Is it Villeneuve or is it about, I don't know who it's actually about. I think it's about Gilles Villeneuve, but that's a good documentary. Anyway, you should look it up. It was on Sky last night. But yeah, he won his first Grand Prix in 1982, and also, which you probably noticed from the riddle, he has a bit of a reputation, sort of like Charles Leclerc, I guess, for playing piano, for being a pianist outside of Formula 1. And yeah, he just had that love of music. In 1985, De Angelis was paired with Ayrton Senna. Probably honestly a nightmare. I mean, iconic to be like the teammate with Ayrton Senna, but also no one is going to be watching you realistically. And yeah, unsurprisingly, he couldn't really keep up with Senna, but he did manage to win a race, and he had some great races that year as well. So he did prove himself as capable driver to be right up there with everyone else. In 1986, he moved to Brabham team, but the car was not good. And unfortunately, during a test session at Paul Ricard in France, in May, he had a tragic accident due to a rear wing failure, and he crashed. And unfortunately, when he crashed, there was a fire, and unfortunately, he died from suffocation from the fire. What's it called? What's the word for that? Asphyxiation? 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 What's the word? I wrote it down here, but I don't even know if I spelled it right. Asphyxiation? Asphyxiation? You know when you... Sorry, this isn't funny, but I just can never pronounce anything. It's ridiculous. But yeah, we've seen a lot that these deaths, especially with 1986 being quite a later death, it wasn't the peak of the most dangerous point in Formula 1. So new safety measures did come into play after that, and improvements to safety were made in his name. And yeah, unfortunately he had quite a shorter time in Formula 1 than he deserved, and he's a very talented driver and of course had that lasting impact on the sport. He's a very interesting driver. I didn't really talk about F1 Academy. I'll just quickly go through the 2 F1 Academy races. So Abby Pullen, she claimed her 5th win of the 2024 F1 Academy season, which there's only been like 5 race weekends, so that's very impressive. Has there even been 5, or has there been 4 race weekends? Barcelona, Jeddah, Miami, Zandvoort, 4. Yeah, so she's had 5 wins, which is incredible. She started from pole for race 1, and she just led the race start to finish, because that's just Abby for you. And she had a 3-second lead just by lap 5 as well. So, and Dorian Pan, she seemed to be en route for a P2 at that race, but unfortunately she got a 5-second penalty for a false start, so that dropped her down to 5th, 6th. But that allowed Marty to move up to 2nd place and Vogue to P3. That was good for them, and it was also Maya Wug's home race as well, so that was sort of cute. So I was happy that she got on podium then. Also, Nina Gaidman, the wildcard that I talked about earlier, a very impressive finish in 4th. Best finish for a wildcard so far this season. And yeah, unsurprisingly Chambers and then Nobels was right up there too, making out the top 6. And then yeah, race 1 was also, did I mention that race 1 was rescheduled? So race 1 was supposed to take place after Formula 1 qualifying on Saturday, but the weather was just too horrific to race in, so it got rescheduled to before race 2 on Sunday morning. Race 2, Dorian Pan, like I said, she started on pole and she won the race. Dorian Pan has been dealing with some struggles recently, so it was nice to see her finally take that win again and to have a clean race and a good race. It was only her 2nd race of the season. She won the 1st race of the season. And yeah, like Abby, she led from start to finish. Abby finished in 3rd for race 2, and Maya Wug again finished P2. So very, very strong weekend for Maya Wug as well. And also, quite impressively, Gaidman, she got a 10-second penalty for a collision and she still managed to finish on the top 10. So I think Nina Gaidman is someone to keep your eye on. I just saw a lot of negativity about F1 Academy this weekend, and it just is so annoying. Like, what's the actual point of being negative about it? If you don't want to watch it, don't watch it. There's some motorsport series that I don't watch. Doesn't mean I'm going to just comment on all of their pictures, being obsessed with them, saying how bad the series is. I mean, I don't really think any motorsport series is bad, because I'm not a loser. But even if I did, I wouldn't do that. So if you are someone who just likes to talk negatively about F1 Academy the entire time, just like chill for a second and ask yourself what it brings you. Does it bring you happiness in life, or does it make you like a bit of a loser? I just think anyone who hates on people for no reason are losers, and that's the truth. That's the truth. A bit more ranting in today's episode than I wanted to do, but made it more fun for me anyway. That's it. That's all we have to talk about. Monza is this weekend. I went to Monza last year. If I was going to give advice to anyone who wants to go to Monza with general admission, I would just suggest not going to Monza with general admission. So I got it as a present, Monza, so I was in the grandstands, luckily enough. But my brother was in general admission because he wanted to go as well, and I bought him a grandstand ticket on the Friday after we got there, because he was like, yeah, I'm not coming back this weekend. I know I've just spent all this money, but I'll watch the race from a bar because I can't deal with this general admission. But if anyone has good general admission stories from Monza, I'd actually love to hear them. That's it. I think Monza will be a good one. There was a little streak for Monza a while ago. The person who won Monza the year before DNF'd the year after, but then Max won, and then Max won again. So that has been broken. But I think Monza will be a good race this weekend. Bye everyone.